I posted a video a little bit ago in response to generic art dad saying that we need to all stop spending. We need to all withdraw our money from the economy. And in that video, I was like, yeah, absolutely. I've been saying that from the beginning. You're completely right. The way that we impact the oligarchs, the way that we impact the businesses that are pillars of support under the Trump regime is that we hit them in the wallet. The only language they speak is money, but we have to go beyond telling people just stop spending. And we need an organized plan, not only for economic resistance, but to work toward a general strike. And of course, because I said general strike in that video, it's getting absolutely throttled. I think it only has 500 views, but like 200 likes. The view to like ratio is insane. But I posted it over to YouTube where you can talk about general strikes all day long and the algorithm won't crush your video. And I got a number of comments from folks, including one that really stood out to me. This guy was like, general strikes don't work. The only thing that stopped the Nazis in World War II was violence. I'm like, if you think you're going to stop this without some kind of war, without some kind of, violent resistance, you're not going to do anything. First of all, no. The reason that it culminated in armed conflict in the 1940s was because people within Germany did not stand up and engage in the nonviolent resistance methods that were requisite to topple the fascists in the early stages in that point in time. Also, the United States and 1930s, 40s Germany, not analogous. Yeah, I know we want to see all of the similarities, but our culture, the size of our country, the economics of the situation are all very different. And it's completely inaccurate and disingenuous to be like, there's no way we can stop this without violence. I understand how many folks, especially white men, like really crave violence and they think that that's the solution. This guy in my comments was like, I'm not going to spend less money. I'm not going to experience any kind of discomfort in that way. I'm not going to stop buying the things that I need and deprive myself. And then at the same time, he was like, but y'all go fight a war. Just want to remind folks that violent resistance against authoritarianism is twice as likely to fail as nonviolent resistance. And nonviolent does not mean peaceful. Nonviolent resistance should be disruptive. I understand that our society, that our movie industry has promoted this false narrative because it's far more sexy, it's far more cinematic to believe that violent conflict is the way to effectively stop this stuff. You can't make a sweeping Oscar-worthy movie about people choosing not to buy shit, about people organizing for like mutual aid and a general strike. We live in an oligarchy. We live in late stage capitalism. You have to speak the language of your oppressors. You have to know where to leverage them. What is their Achilles heel? It's money. For Trump also, it's money. Everything that he does is a grift. These guys are all grifters trying to get really wealthy, inflicting harm and suffering. They want those big fat government contracts to spend billions of our taxpayer dollars. Publicly traded for-profit corporations have decided that they can increase their revenue, they can increase their dividends for their shareholders by appeasing and collaborating with the fascists. And we have to show them, you guys are absolutely your calculus is absolutely deficient, woeful, you have done fucked up. And our society has really cultivated, especially in white men, that violence is what gets the job done, that violence is far sexier, far more alluring, and somehow superior to other techniques. It definitely lets you vent your rage. It definitely gratifies your ego, at least when you engage in it in your head. I don't see these guys getting off the sofa to do much of anything. They can't even be bothered to commit to an economic boycott, but they're sitting there on their keyboards telling everybody else to engage in armed resistance against the United States government. But it does remind me of so many online leftists I see who make these videos that are like, protests do nothing, they don't work. First of all, you don't understand what the point of protest events like No King's Day, and there's going to be a No King's Day 2 coming up. Be watching, be paying attention. There's going to be an announcement about it soon. There are also big protests and events all around the country on Labor Day weekend. Go to maydaystrong.org to find one near you. As long as we're talking about general strikes, as long as we're talking about the power of the labor movement. I mean, if you want to talk about the efficacy of the labor movement and nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience, the sheer power of the American people to withdraw our labor and our dollars from the economy, go ahead and start plugging in to Labor Day events. Go to maydaystrong.org. But like the same people who make their Twitter think pieces, make their videos, drop comments like this long on my YouTube channel, who just want to fantasize about violence and say nothing is going to happen until we start a war. All these other techniques are just like completely a waste of time. One, we've not been effectively employing those other techniques. Two, it is an absolute fallacy to believe there is a progression from non-effective techniques to effective techniques, and that like protests are down here, general strikes are down here, and that as you progress, you move toward violence. That's a complete fallacy. Again, violent resistance twice as likely to fail as organized, sustained, nonviolent resistance. But these same folks who just sit comfortably at home and urge other people to commit violence while they do fuck all. They can't even cancel their Netflix subscription. They can't even participate in a boycott. They don't contribute to mutual aid at all. But they sit there bemoaning the fact that protests don't work. If you're listening to folks like that, I find that they are overwhelmingly men, overwhelmingly white men, but not exclusively. If you've been listening to folks like that, if you've been following big creators who talk like that, I want you to ask them a question. If you think that protests aren't effective, if you think the regime needs to be stopped, what are you doing to organize for a general strike? What are you doing to push toward the one thing that will be the most effective in grinding the regime to a complete halt? What will be the one thing that will be most effective in bringing the oligarchy to its knees? A general strike. So what are you doing to plan for one? If you are sitting there making videos, typing your Twitter think piece, telling people that protests are useless because you don't understand what the point of a protest is, and you are doing nothing to engage in mutual aid to build those support networks, those scaffoldings, if you are doing nothing to start general strike funds, if you are doing nothing to organize with the labor movement, if you are doing nothing to use your giant platform and your income to support a strike fund, to support the organization and lay the groundwork for a general strike, then I want you to shut the fuck up. If you sit there talking about how protests don't do anything, but you aren't doing anything to organize so that we can implement the direct actions that will actually stop this regime, while you sit there and you fantasize about disabled people, children, women, black folks, immigrants, getting rolled over by the tank treads in your bloody revolution, because that's what happens if you are thinking about, fantasizing about, dreaming about, wanting a violent conflict with the American government. Any revolution will always sacrifice potentially millions of the most vulnerable. If you keep dropping your comments and urging other people to take up your violent fantasy that you hope will be the most effective because you haven't bothered to study history, and you are doing nothing to organize for disruptive, nonviolent, highly effective, direct actions against the fascists, against the oligarchy, shut the fuck up and sit down. I'm really over y'all. None of us should be listening to creators like that. We should be working with folks, listening to folks, promoting folks who want to get to work, who understand the assignment, who have decades of experience in labor organizing. The rest of y'all who sit around fantasizing about your fictional video game version of what resistance against an authoritarian regime actually looks like, maybe spend that time instead reading up on the history of the labor movement, reading up on other strikes in the United States and elsewhere that have been very effective. You could start with the Polish Solidarity movement of the 1980s. You could look at the flight attendants strike during Trump's first term in office. I mean, here in the United States, the steelworkers strike of 1959? The nationwide strike of miners in 1946. Y'all, we got 400,000 people across the United States to organize for a strike in 1946. I've said it from day one that if all the teachers in the United States decided to go on strike, that this regime would crumble in a matter of weeks. Every time I say that, I get a bunch of teachers telling me why they can't do that, how a bunch of teachers are MAGA hats, how Republicans in their states have made sure to enact laws that make it illegal for teachers to strike unless they're in the middle of negotiating their contract. Of course, Republicans have done everything they could over the last several decades to erode the power of the labor movement, to erode the power of unions. Why do you think that is? They want to make it harder. They want to discourage you from taking the actions now that would be effective in stopping them. Republicans have played the long game. It's about time we started to as well. A general strike is not a quick lift. It's not an easy action. It takes a tremendous amount of planning. That's why we're seeing labor unions pushing for one in 2028. Stop sitting on your mom's sofa telling me that you're going to do fuck all while trying to incite other people to violence. And grow up a little bit and get busy doing the actual work that will get the job done of stopping the authoritarians and reinstituting a democracy, creating a stable government in the United States. Realize where your real power is as American workers and consumers in a capitalistic society, and then leverage that power. because it is ultimately the power of the people that is far greater than the people in power.